Well, good day and hello everyone and welcome to today's webcast, Quick Start to Data Governance, Trust Your Customer Experience Data. My name is Wayne Monk. I'll be your host and moderator for the webinar. I'm the Vice President of Alliances at ASG Technologies. Before we begin, I'd like to review some quick housekeeping items with you. Today's presentation will last approximately 45 minutes and will be followed by a Q&A session. Please type your questions into the Q&A panel in the meeting interface at any time during the webcast. We'll answer as many questions as possible following the presentation. If you're not able to get your question addressed, we'll be happy to respond and answer by mail. Also, today's webinar is being recorded. You'll receive a link to the webinar and slides by email. We encourage you to share this recording with your colleagues who are unable to attend. Looks like we have a fantastic group on the line. Our presenter today is Tim Perry, Vice President at AmberLeaf. Tim has a great amount of excellent information that he'll share with you today. So Tim, I'll turn the presentation over to you.
Terrific. Thanks, Wayne. And hello, everybody. The focus for today, as Wayne said, was a quick start data governance with a focus on customer experience. And really, we want to highlight the importance of enterprise data intelligence on those CX initiatives. For those of you on the phone that are from the IT side, when we're talking about customer experience initiatives, I'm sure you've seen the buzzword. We're really talking about the sales, service, and marketing arms of your business, those applications, those data repositories. For the folks on the business side, we're going to talk about, obviously, the importance of the data that supports those initiatives and the importance of making sure that the data is shared across those three pillars of the organization, across sales, service, and marketing effectively. So as we start, a lot of organizations have trouble with one or many of the questions down below. As you start to assess your position from a data governance, data quality stance within enterprise data intelligence, look at, do you know how all your customer-facing data gets into those business applications? Are you able to map out, or do you already have an existing diagram internally that talks about your entire CX ecosystem, from source to target, and how data is shared across all the interim steps? Do you have standard corporate definitions for terms that are critical to sales, service, and marketing? For example, is there a common understanding for who the customer is, or when someone is a customer? Can you define customer? You have a whole bunch of data silos throughout the organization where customer data, behavioral data, is all managed separately or independently and with different business rules. Are you constantly sort of battling distrust in some of the data? If you're on the IT side, are you getting questions about where this data comes from? Why is it inaccurate? On the business side, you always feel like you're questioning that data and maybe creating your one-off repositories where you're doing ad hoc data quality on top of it. And ultimately, for those of you that have customers in the European Union, are you prepared for GDPR and the massive fines that are potentially tied to it? So those are some of the things that we'll talk about today and how that ultimately impacts the bottom line from a CX perspective. So this slide is really just meant to represent, for all of you, you probably have one or two or several of the applications on this list. And this is just a small sampling of the many, many, many applications that are out there from a CX perspective. The CX landscape is filled with so many different applications. We need to, as organizations, combat that by integrating the key information and creating transparency across those applications. A huge component of enterprise data intelligence is the architecture itself. So moving from these mass spaghetti diagrams to something that is a little bit more organized and streamlined from just a data integration perspective and data architecture. But beyond that, as we look into enterprise data intelligence, a big component is on people and process, as well as the technologies that then support these things and support capabilities around data inventory, data lineage, impact analysis, business glossary, data help desk, things that aren't necessarily just called out from this pure architecture solution, but are massive components of an enterprise data intelligence solution. So next, I'm going to just walk us through a few different real-life examples that may be affecting your CX organizations. So first, on the sales side, do your sales teams literally resolve conflicts between duplicates in the CRM system in manners like this, where they're fighting over an account? There are duplicates in your CRM system that causes sales reps to reach out to a customer, maybe with different messaging at different times. It leads to marketing being unable to effectively score and aggregate behavior to those accounts to really understand that lifetime model, the lifetime value, etc., all leading to customer experience issues, operational and internal conflicts, and ultimately to revenue impacts. From a marketing perspective, something that's just clearly evident is when you have duplicate messages being sent out to folks. And this is an example, real-life example from LL Bean. The names and addresses here have been changed, but the scenario is real, where there is a coworker of mine who is receiving 4 printed LL Bean catalogs each quarter of each year. It's the same single-family address. And this problem manifests itself into budgetary issues for marketing, but as well has potentially a simple fix and a more complicated fix. First, from a simple perspective, should they only be sending one printed material to a single-family address, to a single address? That might be the simple one. The more complicated, how do you then pick which person's name to put on that mailing? Do you look at other attributes, behavior, recent purchases, total purchases, to pick that right person? And as you can see here in this real example, one of the named individuals at that household is the household cat. Somebody had bought a gift for the family to the cat, and that cat is now an individual at this household. So obviously that is not right. This has marketing spend, budgetary impacts. It has environmental impacts. Some people are just opposed to receiving so many printed catalogs, and definitely CX impacts if people may not buy as much. Some people may completely terminate a relationship over it, etc. The next example is from Wine Library. This corresponds to a service and sales interaction. So here it starts off with another coworker of mine received a Facebook ad and was intrigued by Wine Library to go purchase wine that could be delivered to their house. So they went through the process online, picked 12 different bottles of wine to have shipped to their house, only to find out that they could not have wine shipped to their house based on shipping restrictions to their state. Wine Library did a good job of trying to promote oils and vinegars as an alternative, but without any adequate integration to other channels, they then proceeded to try to sell this individual and acquire them as a customer via email by sending them an email every day for the next 45 days and counting. So you might say, why did that person not unsubscribe? And they probably should have, but I think after a point in time it became somewhat of a joke, and then they started to blast Wine Library on Facebook. And then it was the cascading social media impact. So here again, highlighting a customer experience impact from data issues and data disconnects between service and sales and some other points and channels. Wayne, kind of turn it back to you to ask, are you seeing similar sort of issues like this and maybe a different example?
Well, Tim, we definitely are in our own business. Sometimes I feel like the picture you had a few back, wrestling with our colleagues over certain data elements. I'll give you 3 scenarios that we see in our own business. One is it's amazing how complex the systems are that you depend on to run your sales, marketing, and support organizations. You know, we're a relatively mid-sized software company, and it just amazes me how many systems that our data flows through, whether it's in our environment, it's Marketo. Of course, we have a CRM system. CRM feeds an accounting system, Lawson. We have a professional services billing systems called 10 Rocks. Obviously, a support desk and support case, customer success capability. We have a partner portal that data flows through, and even some SaaS-based commission calculating systems. And let's not forget about the presentation layer where we use SAP Objects, Click, and who knows how many other people are grabbing the data and dropping it into spreadsheets and whatnot. So first, just the complexity and knowing even what data resides in what systems and keeping all that synchronized. So that's a big challenge. So when you put up that second slide, that not only paints our environment, but I imagine everyone on this call has probably even more complex environments than we do. So that's a challenge, right? The second is, I won't dwell on this one, but site IDs. We refer to our customers, having site IDs, and there are cases where we've got hundreds of site IDs per customer. Reps prefer just to enter new ones versus use old ones, and so we've got the data wrangling and fighting over. Sometimes they'll set up a site ID just because it's in their territory, so ensuring that our data quality and measurements there are clean. And then the one that really I live with quite a bit is, and I don't think we're unique in the software business, we have various ways we classify our revenue. A lot of regulations around revenue classification and software recognition, but we have, license revenue. We have license plus maintenance. We have just the maintenance fees themselves. We have something we call net new license maintenance. We have the commission amount. We have partner costs. We have total contract value, and they're all named under certain acronyms, right? We're a business. So you can imagine the arguments that we have over, first of all, is that figure correct? And then secondly, which one it is. Is it an L&M? Is it TDV? Is it whatever, right? And then for new people coming into the company or people who may not work with the revenue as frequently, even understanding what these terms are, so having the ability to have a data glossary and understand the definitions. And as you know, these data ultimately feed financial systems. In our case, we use our CRM very heavily, including bookings and others. And those, financial systems feed your financial reporting. So you want to make sure that you understand where the source of that data comes from. Are you pulling the right data? And of course, we do various transformations of that and calculations on the data as it flows through the various systems. So, yeah, Tim, I'd say we have a few challenges in our environment. So this resonates real well, and I'm sure it does with anyone who has sales, marketing, and support functions.
Those are great call-outs. Thanks, Wayne. Let's hope that for those financial systems and the definitions that you tied to it, ultimately, if they're being entered incorrectly because people don't know exactly how they are supposed to be represented or not, that ultimately customers aren't getting invoices that are inaccurate. And ultimately, from a customer experience perspective, I'm sure that doesn't happen there. But at other organizations, things like that, could happen. And that's where, this disconnected customer experience that we're talking about ultimately has an impact. All these examples that Wayne gave, the ones that we outlined from a marketing spend, from a service perspective, they ultimately lose business, and they have an impact on the customer experience, which means customers will look to other brands to help them service. So what do we do? As we start to transform the conversation from examples that are in the marketplace, by now hopefully some of you you're thinking of things in your own organization that are problems or that you've heard about or that you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And ultimately we're all striving to deliver a single version of truth across these different channels by delivering the right data at the right time, in the right form, to the right user. And each of those is made up of a few different characteristics, but the ones that we'll focus on for today are starting with data governance, data quality, reference data management, and data lineage. And we're going to give you some quick real-life tactics that hopefully you can take away from here and act on to help make improvements in these areas. So first up, from a data governance perspective, for those of you with really small data governance groups or without data governance, the picture here will probably resonate where you have very complex architectures like you saw earlier in the presentation, very silo-driven, a lot of different applications with their own customer repositories or transaction repositories. Ultimately, this type of environment causes the confusion that Wayne talked about from a definitions perspective and business glossary, but ultimately it's also handicapping your ability to advance in the marketplace. So you're slower to market with new enhancements, new systems, new solutions. If every project starts off with, well, where do we begin? Or where does that data come from? That is crippling. And without data governance, that's where you start off. Hopefully as you progress here as a starting point from today, or if you've already embarked on it, as you begin with data governance, there's the focus on centralizing that information. Coming up with a common vocabulary, creating single versions of the truth. That doesn't necessarily mean it has to be in a single repository, but you know where the single version of truth is for customer data or financial data and how that information propagates its way to other systems. Data quality and a focus on data quality to clean up bad data in places before it hits your customer. If bad data is coming in through the sales channel, through CRM, whether it be Dynamics or Salesforce or Sugar CRM, bad data is being entered through those systems, cleaning it up before it makes its way into the marketing application, before it makes its way to the customer. And ultimately, the highlighted one that I skipped over there, agility. Again, agility to adapt and enhance your system. Too often are we seeing projects stalled or stopped because people don't know where to begin or where that data lives. Data governance helps eliminate that. Data governance is not just a technology problem, and it is not just a business problem. A lot of times we're asked, who owns data governance? And it is both an IT and business function. You need to have support from both groups. You need technology groups, IT groups, to execute on these platforms and this capability, and you need the business folks to assess, profile, and come up with those definitions that can ultimately be executed on. Data governance is clearly at this point a people, process, and technology solution. It is not just a technology issue anymore. Data governance, a lot of times people begin data governance and realize that it's a long road ahead, and they're right. Candidly, a very well-established data governance program is a long process. It's a marathon. But there's things that you can do along the way. Establish quick hits. Establish milestones along that marathon that show the organization improvements and enhancements. If you don't outline a plan early on for your data governance solution, you will be asked questions like, why aren't we done yet? How much longer do we have until data governance project is over? Data governance is an ongoing process in the organization, but it can be won over early on with quick hits. And as depicted here, mile one, finding those low-hanging fruit solutions that you can put in place to fix the high-priority problems or pain points. As you begin data governance, it's important to establish cheerleaders along the way. Somewhat of a sidebar process note here, but it is important. Because it is a long process, because it is a marathon, you will need to gain cheerleaders and sponsors. The best way to do this is those quick hits. Show them results. Find people in the organization that are feeling the pain and show them how data governance can improve things, even though incrementally through some of the quick hits. Next, we're going to shift over to data quality. Moving from data governance to data quality, as these new architectures are being deployed, data lakes, data warehouses, data marts, and just common integration across all of the sales, service, and marketing applications, data quality is extremely important. Otherwise, you're just passing around bad data. Again, back to those duplicates into your CRM system. Things need to be done up front to clean that data. So as we look at scrubbing that data, how do you go about that process? Some of the things that we recommend here are focus on the value creation, prioritize. You can't solve for all of the data quality issues all at once. If you're on the business side, identify the top pain points that you have and work with IT to put processes in place to clean up those elements. Don't give them the list of a million attributes that they won't be able to embark on. Make that a prioritized order to address the pain points. Work with the source system owners. A lot of times if you're downstream from something, you're trying to mask the issues. If you can, work all the way back to the source system. For example, if your CRM system is creating a lot of bad data, is there anything that you can do on the front-end application maybe to lock down a field? A common example is states and zip codes in cities. If things are being commonly misspelled, bad abbreviations, can you have lookup values that are predefined for folks so those are the only valid values they can pull from, so that's clean data by the time it makes it downstream into marketing or service, etc. Again, a focus on business here, even within data quality. We need the business owners to help define the rules for IT. And ultimately, data quality is also an ongoing process. You need to be able to establish ways to monitor, remediate, enhance, and then continue monitoring your data quality issues. So next we're going to talk about a few quick hit, practical, actionable CX data quality improvements that you can make. First, at the top of the list is some health check queries, some reports. We're going to talk about those a little bit more in the next two slides. But the others on this list are things that you can do to correct the data from a sales, service, and marketing perspective that have a big impact. Small things typically. Come up with company name standardization so you don't have as many inconsistencies with abbreviations and such. Title standardizations. VP, vice president. Come up with a consolidated standard list for those standardizations and then apply that correction on these business applications. We've talked about the state correction and lookups. You can perform those things. Phone number corrections and formatting checks, just to make sure that you have the right number of digits, no miscellaneous characters. Another big one is form pre-fills. So whether it's an internal form or maybe an internal application when you're trying to add a new customer or look up somebody, make sure that they're form pre-fills so that they actually do that lookup across the systems back to that single version of the truth and allow attributes to be pre-filled so people aren't incorrectly entering things repeatedly from both, again, internally as well as to customer-facing landing pages and things of that nature. And there's a few others on the list for you to review. So aside from the data quality improvements themselves, we talked a little bit about the monitoring and remediation. So this slide is meant to capture, ultimately coming up with those rules and those alerts, ultimately the scorecards that you want to create internally to monitor the data. The process at the top just walks you through how you even come up with, creating those scorecards by establishing the right people, coming up with the business rules, establishing thresholds, data quality check levels, and then creating that output format of the scorecard itself or the alerts. If you have ASG, there's some of the reports within the tool. You can also use some of the third-party technologies or even just direct alerts straight from the OS or system level. That output, those alerts, those scorecards, then feed into the business-as-usual remediation process, and that's the circle on the right-hand side. So as you're establishing this process internally to check data quality ongoing, you want to begin by looking at those scorecards, and as alerts come about, as thresholds are exceeded, evaluate the impact from those data quality failures. Next, going into perform root cause analysis. And this is tough. And we'll talk a little bit more about data lineage in a moment. But this is where a technology can really help out the process. and being able to traverse back in your ecosystem to see where the origin or the root of the problem existed, then you can actually act on that. Perform the remediation, fix the issue, escalate the issue, prioritize it, and feed back into this circle of remediation. Next topic, through the process, is reference data management. Trying to give you a few adoption tactics here. First and foremost, reference data cannot be a silo in and of itself. You have to integrate that data. So if you're from maybe the sales organization and you come up with a really good set of reference data, share that with the other groups, get their feedback. That integration in systems is going to be key. The other is that collaboration. So make sure you get input from those other groups. What may work for one department may not be the best fit across the organization. So get that collaboration, utilizing your data governance process to determine and establish the reference data values. A big part of reference data, as you embark on that process, is understanding that hierarchies matter. The world is not flat, and neither are hierarchies. You have to take into consideration when you're selecting a reference data management tool or solution, how you're going to manage those complex hierarchies, how you're going to import reference data, how you're going to ultimately manage the changes as the hierarchies change and evolve, and ultimately how you're going to integrate to and from that reference data set so that you can push that information out to other systems. Heavily leverage workflows. If you're selecting a technology, again, look at the capabilities around hierarchies, look at the capabilities around workflows. As changes come about or get proposed, you want to know how you're going to approve those, review those, and apply them. And workflows are a great way to do that. This is just a quick example of several key customer experience specific reference data sets. The big one on the left, the grid, is the continuation of what we were talking about before, is just U.S. states and abbreviations. Common misspellings cause chaos from service, sales, and marketing. Misspellings of things like Tennessee, Massachusetts, Connecticut are very common. So lock those values down so when people are filling out forms, that is a pre-fill. Standard value in, data quality is ensured, and then you can utilize that downstream. Some other reference data examples or common examples are on the right, ranging from products, work order types, call dispositions, response types, and more. Next up is data lineage. And this is ensuring that we get the right data into the right user's hands and being able to look across the ecosystem to see where this data is coming from, how it was calculated, and its impact. So for those of you who may not be familiar with data lineage is really being able to do exactly that, is to go into a system, select a field or a value or a table, and see where the source of information for that table, where it came from. And it may be multiple hops. And some of the better data lineage technologies can go through the entire ecosystem to see the true origin of that data and any calculations performed in between. So when you're starting to embark on the data lineage part of the process, find the right CX users. There's definitely sales folks, VP of sales or others, that are impacted by those sales reports. You're getting bad data, you're getting bad information on sales, closed bookings, etc. Where's the problem? How can you traverse back into your warehouse or your mart? How do you know where it's really coming from? There's people in marketing that are sending out correct or incorrect names to the wrong address. How do you traverse back to find out where the origin of that problem is? Prove the value. Prove the value of lineage by choosing some of these people that are most affected on the front end, the larger pain points. Use the data lineage tool to traverse back and show the value of correcting it and finding the root cause. Understand the effort. Data lineage, if you're trying to do this manually, is very, very significant. Huge effort. Look at technologies to support this. ASG's technology is fabulous in this area of data lineage, being to traverse through the entire ecosystem, which we'll talk about in a moment. Automation expansion, being able to automate that process of data lineage checks. So the benefits of data lineage, we talked through several of these. Going back to the beginning is really exactly, being able to see where all the CX data flows from source systems all the way to those business applications. You can understand how the CX data flows between core systems across channels to eliminate the disconnects across those channels, and ultimately supporting agility. We talked about that earlier in the presentation. For organizations that are unable to identify how a change is going to impact other systems, having a data lineage technology is a huge gain. If you're trying to embark on where you're changing a value or a definition, a lot of organizations hit that stalemate, are unable to begin the project because they don't know how it's going to affect all the downstream systems. Having a data lineage tool allows you to go in, see that value, and see how it's being passed downstream. The results of data lineage are real. So these are a couple examples from a top 5 U.S. bank, the case study of the advantage of before and after a data lineage tool. So after the data lineage tool, they were able to go through and do root cause analysis within 4 days versus 25,000 hours. That's real. That's not just for compliance or regulatory purposes. That can also be for sales reporting checks, data warehouse development, data mart development, marketing solutions, etc. Big cost savings, big time savings for everybody through data lineage projects. The ASG technology is huge in this area, as I mentioned. There's a patent pending zero gap lineage. This is just an example. They have over 260 scanners. A scanner is defined as something that can go out and scan different technologies for all of its code. This example here is showing you that it's utilizing the scanners to go across the mainframe, go across Java, PL SQL, Informatica, a data integration tool, business objects for reporting, going across Salesforce, a CRM application, and PeopleSoft, all through their scanners to see how one bit of data is propagated throughout the entire data architecture. You're able to, through the tool, drill down into the transformations that are happening in between, as depicted there in the transformation detail. You can see the actual query that's occurring. So having that visibility through essentially a UI click is massive. For today, if you're doing this manually, you have to go talk to many different source system owners, DBAs, etc., and try to piece that together over many, many weeks and hours. Now that can be done in minutes or a couple of days. Data lineage also is going to be a key supporter and enabler to combat the GDPR initiative that's coming in May of 2018. For those of you who have any customers in the European Union, GDPR is the data protection regulation that's coming. Any customer-facing data that you're capturing now is going to need to be evaluated to make sure that it's obfuscated or cleansed and appropriately separated out. And having a data lineage tool that can identify that personally identifiable information or PII data, can look across all your applications, is going to be key. So as you prepare yourselves for GDPR and the potential fines associated with GDPR, look at data lineage as another enabler to help assess the impact across the organization. So we've talked at this point about data governance, data quality, reference data management, and data lineage. A lot of different components of the entire ecosystem and how all that ultimately can improve the data that is exposed to your end customers. So where do you begin? You can't try to boil the ocean, so you have to assess and prioritize. We talked about that a couple times in here. Find the key pain points, identify actionable things to go after within each of those components, show results early. And how do you do that? One way to do it is to start by performing a self-assessment. The diagram on the left just shows a generalization for any organization. Start with the customer. How is your customer interacting with your organization across all the interaction channels? Through a POS, ATM, an email, a website, social media, etc. How is all that data being passed into your organization across the three big departments of sales, service, and marketing? As you get to that point, you'll already identify some gaps or question marks. Take it another step further and look at those small sub-boxes down in sales, service, and marketing, and look how the data is actually shared across sales, service, and marketing. Is it shared? Is there a common single source of truth or not? Ask yourself those questions and find those additional gaps. That will help you prioritize, ultimately document your ecosystem, and enhance it. When I say document, ultimately you want to be able to have an ecosystem or architecture diagram that shows where all the data is coming from all your various source systems, internal and external, flowing through any of your data integration events through a warehouse, data mart, data lake, whatever the case may be, and out to your end-facing business applications, marketing, sales, service. As you identify those things down to this level, you'll find more and more opportunities for improvement and gap closure. So lastly, common challenges. There's a bunch listed here. I'll just highlight a couple. Again, data governance and data quality are not driven purely by the business, and they're not a technology-only solution. They have to work together. Technology alone will not solve the problem, but it does aid in it. As I just said, a technology to support data lineage is a big capability that can then feed into the process-oriented pieces of data quality, data governance, and even the reference data composure. There's other key call-outs here for data governance around data stewardship. Data stewards, as you get started, it's very difficult. You start to create somebody as a part-time data steward, and a lot of times they get repurposed. So be aware going into it that that person, whoever you do allocate towards the data governance, data stewardship, that is an obligation going forward. It's very difficult to predict how much time they're going to need to spend on it, as it's called out in number 7 here, because it's like production support. Data stewardship, creation of reference data, it comes in peaks and valleys, and it's hard to plan for that. But as you're allocating resources from a data governance perspective, be aware of it, heads up, and plan accordingly to where you are allocating a data steward. That is their role. Don't just have that as an added piece to their overall responsibility. Strike the right balance between automation and manual intervention. Early stages are probably a little higher in manual intervention. You don't know all the data that you're dealing with. You don't know all the data quality issues. So as you begin to clean things up, as you begin to enhance, that's where you introduce automation. And automation must continuously help the process over time. Show those incremental improvements, whether it be the data governance, as we talked about, data quality, reference data management, or to data lineage. Show quick wins and incremental improvements over time. With that, I'll turn it back to you, Adine, see if there's any questions out in the group.
How many organizations, or how do organizations that do not have a formal data governance program typically get started? And how many people would we need to allocate?
Good question. As I tried to show there's a couple ways, just initially by doing that self-assessment. But beyond that, the data governance organization that you're asking about, there's primarily 2 ways that organizations start off. One is top-down, and the other is bottom-up. Top-down being through executive leadership mandating that there is a large organization or enterprise-wide data governance strategy in place, and then the sub-departments fall into place to that mandate. And that's amazing, but very rare when that happens. So the more common is a bottom-up approach, and that is where one of the business applications or business owners, along with IT, working together to make improvements in their area, show gains, show momentum, and then grow that program across channels, across departments through the organization. The most important part there is to get started. So as far as resources, typically it is a business and an IT counterpart with somebody that is primarily focused on data stewardship, as I mentioned, even though there's going to be peaks and values to that workload, but to identify somebody that is primarily a data steward, reference data person.
Okay, great. Thanks, Tim. There's a couple more here. This says you talked about requiring people and technologies. What technologies are usually required to support this process?
That's a good question. So, across these different components, data governance is a heavy people, process-focused solution. Technology can help manage some of the data and some of the processes behind it. And ASG is a very common one. That's going to be a theme here. We're on an ASG webinar, but that's really the support there from a data governance perspective. For data quality, that can be a lot of different technologies. Obviously, there's a people and process piece there, but at the end of the day, most of that is a technology solution. That can be through any of the data integration platforms that you probably already own. A lot of them have data quality tools. They can be done in small workarounds for your workarounds for your quick hits. But long term, those should make its way back to that enterprise data quality or data integration platform. For reference data and data lineage, heavy call out to ASG. If you haven't already looked at them for data lineage especially, that is a massive time saver, fabulous technology, and it is one that can save you tons of money. We showed the example from the top 5 U.S. banks, but there's numerous examples across regulatory compliance type issues, but as well as on these customer experience, customer-facing challenges. Using a tool like ASG for the data lineage, traversing back is a massive improvement.
Okay, thank you. And there's one more, and this is kind of a long one. It says, if we were to undertake a project like this, how would you work with us? What information would you need? What types of people, and how long would it take?
Got it. Yes, that is a long one. I probably won't remember all the components of that. In short, I'd say, first, our contact information is on the screen that you're seeing now, so people can definitely reach out from that standpoint. Two, at AmberLeaf, we do offer a data governance accelerator, which is meant to establish a framework for you in your organization to jumpstart your data governance solution, including the things that we talked about today. It is a framework. It is not the end answer. The reason I say that is because each organization is a little bit different. You may have already started some initiatives in some areas. Maybe you haven't started any. We start off our framework with assessing what you have in place today from a people, process, and technology perspective, create a roadmap for you, and help you get started with those quick wins. At the end of the day, you can get a data governance program, including all these things, established within a few months, but the journey is just beginning. I mean, data governance does take a long time, as we talked about earlier. It is a marathon, but you can show a lot of value, a lot of gains, a lot of things that hit the bottom line along the way. And with that, I'll wrap up that answer. I'm not sure if I addressed all the pieces, but hopefully enough of them.
I think they got the gist. And as you said, your contact information is here if people would like to reach out. So with that, I'd like to thank you, Tim, for a great presentation today. And thanks also to Wayne. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. We will send out the slides and recording shortly. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day. Bye.